The first time we ever thought there might be anything wrong at all was during the 20-week ultrasound. The entire time, he was basically headbanging, arching his back, and just rocking the entire ultrasound.
One around.
And then we asked the tech, we're like, is that concerning? And she said, I don't know. I've never seen that before. I don't think so. And so we were like, okay. But when we looked it up at home, the very first thing that popped up was autism. And so since my husband has some autistic family members on his side of the family, that was a point where we were like, okay, autism should be on our radar at least. We don't want to read into this, but autism should be on our radar. Finn was born at 37 weeks exactly, and he did end up in the NICU for about a week, but then after we took him home, he was okay. You know, there was some things here and there that we noticed as he was growing, being a little behind on his gross motor, just in general, all his milestones, he hit just a little bit behind. Not enough for the doctors to be concerned. Enough for me to be concerned, but not enough for the doctors to be concerned. So it wasn't until he was around age 2 that he started rapidly losing words and skills and foods that we really started to even consider that he might not be fully independent someday. Up until that point, there was no doubt in our mind that while he was probably autistic, there was no reason to think that he wouldn't be able to live independently, even with his autism. Since that regression around age 2, where it felt like Finn just kind of completely shut down and went inside himself all of a sudden, since that point, it has been a slow journey of gaining back some of those skills and those words and just fighting for each little bit of progress with Finn. And it's easy to forget how far we've come. This was put into perspective for me last week when I was talking to another parent of a special needs child who was telling me about some of the things they've had to go through with their son. And just in order to exist without hurting himself, he's had to go through expensive therapy just to exist, just to be safe with himself physically. It reminded me that even with all that we've gone through with Finn and how hard he's worked to get to where he is, all the progress he's made, all the heartache for us, he has never hurt himself, seriously hurt himself. And just in that one thing alone, there is so much for us to be grateful for. The other day, for the first time in 4 years, Finn sat down with Matthew to read a book all the way through. He snuggled right up and he read the book from start to finish with Matthew. We haven't been able to do that since he was 2. So it's been 4 years since he sat through a book. We went from a child who would read the same book over and over and over again, and we'd have to hide the books in the cushions of the couch to keep him from reading the same book again for the 8th time and to make him go get a different book for us to read. We had a rule where anytime he comes to us with a book, we read it. So I would be on Skype calls with my family and I'd have to open the book and read it because they'd have to sit there while I read the book for like the 5th time, or hang up if they were tired of it. So we went from constantly reading these books over and over again to shutting down completely and taking the books away when we tried to read them to him, ripping them up, stimming with them, but running away anytime I try to go over and engage with him. That was really hard shift, but to see him sit down the other day and let Matthew read the book to him all the way from start to finish brought back all those memories of all the books that we read together when he was little tiny. And it just reminded me how far we've come. Finn was mostly potty trained by the time he was 1. And because we moved and I got pregnant with another baby, things kind of were already sliding a bit by the time he hit 2. But then at 2, it was kind of like a hard reset. And now we're back to being mostly well potty trained. And there are lots of kids with special needs that may not ever be potty trained fully. After years of no verbal communication, Finn is now repeating words with prompting and occasionally using spontaneous language. I cannot tell you how much that gives me hope that he is beginning to communicate. He doesn't need to verbally communicate with me for me to be happy, for me to be content with where he's at. But he's starting to verbally communicate, and that just makes me so happy, so proud of him. When he regressed around age 2, Finn not only stopped verbally communicating, but his receptive communication also suffered, and he stopped following directions. He stopped communicating with us and showing that understanding. So it felt like he wasn't hearing you almost. It felt like he disappeared a little bit. And Finn now follows simple directions again. Finn can follow simple directions. That's so exciting. When Finn was about 3 years old, I remember having a really down day. I was feeling really discouraged with where we were, really lacking in hope for the future and where he'd be able to go and what he'd be able to do and how he was going to exist and be content in this world. On that day, when I felt hopeless, an acquaintance from college posted about their son, and she shared a memory of when her son had really communicated with her a full conversation for the first time that she could remember. Just her sharing that memory of an 8-year-old child having a conversation with his mom, that gave me so much hope when I had no hope. I wrote her a letter. She thought I was trying to sell her something. It's okay. It's okay. I just had to tell her how much that meant to me. And she said, that's why I share. That's why I'm sharing this, because it means something for someone. I've always kind of felt like about now, age 6, around that time, was kind of the cutoff for Finn learning to speak. That after that point, we have no hope of speech. And I don't know where that number came from. It's kind of an arbitrary number, and it's not really rooted in any truth. But in my mind, that's been kind of, he needs to speak by the time he's 6 or he's not going to speak. Earlier this year, I learned about a Cambridge professor who is autistic, who did not speak until he was 11, and who did not learn to read or write until he was 18. And I cannot tell you the sigh of relief that I took when I found out about this person. Just this person existing and sharing their existence and their experience gave me so much hope for my child. It is never too late for him to start speaking. He doesn't ever have to start speaking, but it is never too late. There's never a point where I need to write him off for that, for anything. There's always more time for him to learn. Matthew has a master's degree in biblical studies, and he had always kind of expected that our kids would pursue further education, graduate level education, even though I was kind of like, why? With the, how student loans are right now. But that was always something that Matthew really wanted for his kids. And at this point, we're not really sure what to expect for Finn. Is it possible that he could pursue a master's, a doctorate? Of course, it's still possible. But I think it's not as likely, not as easy as we once thought it would be. When I was 4, I was reading. Not advanced stuff by any means, but I was reading. Neither of my older 2 are reading. I have a 6-year-old, I have a 4-year-old. Neither of them are reading. They're not even close to reading. Something that I have been reminded of this week is that I need to let go of where I think that my children should be. They're going to go at their own pace, and I need to meet them where they are and encourage them in the best way that I know how to embrace where they are and how far they've come, because they have come really far. And they still have the potential to go really far. And so for anyone who feels like there's no hope, there is. There is. And I hope you find it. I hope this helps.